Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. So inshallah, in this lesson, we are going to be moving on to a few more categorizations of hadith. Okay, and let's have a look at this. So the words we're going to use is Gharib, Aziz, Mashhur, and Mutawatir. We'll have a look at this inshallah in more detail as we move along. So here we have a chain. We've not got any names in this, we just have a chain. We have here Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So what is be hadith marfu, mawquf, and maqtu'? What would this be? Marfu, correct. So we have the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. From him a sahabi narrates, from him a tabi'i narrates, from him or her a rawi, another rawi. Okay? Now, if we assume this is the only chain of this narration, like the word, this hadith, let's say for example, Innamal a'malu binniyat, for example. If only the Prophet, obviously the Prophet is going to narrate it, but from him only one sahabi narrates, from him only one tabi'i narrates, from him only one rawi narrates, and from him only one rawi narrates, then throughout this hadith only has one narrator. What is this going to be called? Gharib. What's this hadith even called? Gharib. That there's only one narrator. So in each layer, the Prophet section, the Sahaba's tabaqa, the Tabi'is era, the narrator after them, and narrator after them. In each era is only a single narrator. This is called Gharib. And you have to remember, in this chain, we only judge a hadith, I mentioned this principle before, by the weakest link. So wherever the least amount is, if the least amount, obviously afterwards it becomes a lot. That doesn't really matter. Like after Imam Bukhari, hundreds of people narrate the Bukhari from Imam Bukhari. But let's say up to 3, 4, 5 generations after the Prophet. If there's only one person narrating it, we say it's Gharib. Gharib means a stranger in a village or a stranger in a city. So as if he's the only person there, he's strange. So this hadith is Gharib. There's no other, is on its own. Now a hadith Gharib can be Sahih, it can be Hasan, it can be Da'if. This is another aspect altogether in terms of the number of people that narrate the hadith. So the principle number one is if the minimum number until the 4th, 5th generation is only one, I'm oversimplifying it for now, is only one. What do we call this hadith? Hadithun? What's it called? Hadithun? Gharib. Understood? Everybody following? Yes? You understand the Ji? We're talking about everybody. That there is only one Sahabi narrates it, only one Tabi'i narrates it, from him only one narrator narrates it, and from him only one narrates it. And then later on, as you get further down, obviously then the possibility of it remaining single is very less. And if it is single, that's a question of why did no muhaddith. For example, a Sahabi knew hadith. Sahabi didn't sit in Darus and give lessons. So maybe only one Sahabi narrated it, and from him only one Tabi'i heard. For example, Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala anha. She knew something, and she mentioned to one of her nephews. So only Aisha radiyallahu anha heard it, very possible, from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then she only mentioned to one of her nephews, and then one of her nephews is a Tabi'i. He mentioned to one of his family, and then afterwards it became single. But at the beginning, it was only one or two people narrating it. Either from here or from here onwards, only one or two people narrating it. You will say this is what? This is going to be what? Gharib. The number of narrators is in the early stages is only one. Does that make sense? Yes? Are you following me? The number of narrators in the earliest stages is one. The weakest link. Afterwards, it'll get a lot, because afterwards, and if it remains one, then it's that's another issue altogether. But for now, look at it this way: if the hadith from the Sahaba, Tabi'in, and those narrated from them, up to, let's say this is the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, let's say up to the 4th for now. That gives more detail. I'm simplifying it for you. We can't go too much detail right now. But up to the 4th generation, there's only one person narrating it. We call this hadith what? Gharib. Do you understand? Yes? Okay. What's different about this hadith? How would you describe this hadith? Is it a single narrator? Is it 3 narrators, 2 narrators? How would you describe this one? There's more than one. Is it going to be 3 or is it going to be 2? How would you base this on? Would you say it has 2 narrators or 3 narrators? 2. Yeah, the weakest link. The shortest number is what? 2. So if at any point the lowest number is 2 narrators, you call this hadithun azizun. What do you call this? Hadithun azizun. So hadithun gharibun is when the early generation, the minimum number is 1. The weakest link is 1. The hadithun azizun is where the weakest link is what? 2. There's a minimum of 2 in each chain. And what's this going to be now? What do we have here? We have 4 here, some have 5. So if you have a large amount, you call it mashhur. What do you call it? Mashhur. You got it? Yes, it's called hadithun mashhur because obviously the weakest link is 1, 2, 3, so 4. So now it's 4. So when it's 3 or more, you call it mashhur. And again, you have to remember, there's two things to remember, 2 important points to remember about Surah Hadith. Number one is, in all sciences, the terminologies are not normally unanimous. Like you have differences in opinion in how you define something. In Nahwa, it's like everybody uses the Basri terminology. Nobody makes a big fuss about it too much. But in Hadith, there's so many ulama, so many people discuss it, so many people wrote about it. Everybody has an opinion. So in the definition of mashhur and aziz and gharib and mutawatir, you get different wording, get different things. So when you read other books, you'll see other wording, other definitions. So we're just trying to keep it simple, so don't get confused. This is what we're giving one simple list of definitions, so it's easy to process right now. So if you have 3 or more, what do you call this? A hadithun mashhur. Yes? You have hadithun mashhur. So according to the number of narrators, how many types of hadith do we have? How many types do we have? We done 3. We have hadithun gharib. What does hadithun gharib mean? The minimum number of narrators is 1. What's the next level? Hadithun aziz. What does that mean? That the minimum number of narrators is 2. And then we have what? Hadithun mashhur. Where is what? 3 or more. Now, some ulama have also mentioned a word called mutawatir. Mutawatir meaning it's like even more than mashhur, meaning like there's so many, we don't even need a chain. Are there hadiths like that? Some people differed. Like the Quran. Like there are chains people have, so I heard it from my teacher, etc. But it's not that important because the hadith the Quran has been passed on with so many narrators. Like every single Sahabi or like hundreds of Sahabi passed it on. So when it's like so much, then you call it mutawatir. So it's not mentioned in this book, but it's one term that comes up quite a bit. And it's ikhtilaf regarding, etc. But for now, we have gharib, aziz, and mashhur, the 3 main ones that the ulama have mentioned. Okay? And aziz and mutawatir, something is even more than that. It's like, for example, it's like 9/11, World War II, World War I. It took place, like, who said it took place? Like, everyone knew it took place. It's just so many people, like, every single, I don't have to say, oh, it's in Encyclopedia Britannica, it's in this book, that book. It's like everyone knew it took place. Yes, the smaller details, which day did Hitler die, how many people were killed, which people were involved. These are smaller details. Those are maybe gharib and aziz and mashhur. But the fact of World War I and World War II and slavery, the slave trade, all these different things, this is what? Mutawatir. So many of the narrators, you don't even need a chain for it. You don't have to quote a reference. Mashhur and aziz and gharib, a bit smaller numbers. Okay? Yes? So this is what he says here in text. Mashhur, azizu marwi ithnaini aw thalatha. Aziz is a narration, marwi is a narration of 2 or 3. He said 2 or 3, but that's not what people use. I would normally stick with what he kept in the book, but people don't use that. People say only ithnain. And if 3 people narrate it, if it's marwi of thalatha, what does it become? What's the classical opinion regarding this? If it's marwi thalatha, it becomes what? Mashhur. Mashhuru marwi fawqa ma thalatha. And mashhur is a narration of what is more than 3. So if you have, he's saying more than 3, meaning 4 or more. But we say no, 3 plus. 3 and more is mashhur. Okay? Yes? So again, this information is spread out over 2 poems. Poem number 12 and then poem number 16. And the second half of the poem in 16 is what? وَقُلْ, and say, غَرِيبٌ مَا رَوَى رَاوٍ فَقَط. Is what only one narrator narrates. And say, a gharib is that which a single narrator narrates. So you have here, Aziz is what? Marwi ithnain. You got al thalatha, we have to learn that, but it's not the classic opinion. So Aziz is what two people have narrated. It's a marwi, the narration of two people. And mashhur is marwi fawqa ma thalatha, is what is more than three. We say here, three or more. And qul, and say, gharib is ma rawa rawin faqat, is what only one narrator narrates. Understood? Everybody following? Yes? So let's recap again now. We have hadith. What's a hadith? A hadith is made up of what? Everybody online with me together? Hadith is made up of what? Everybody participate, please. Is what? Made up of? Matan and a sanad. What is a sanad called in English? The sanad, the chain of narrators. And the matan is what? The actual, the text. Okay? Then, according to a hadith being sahih bi'atibari siha, how many types do we have? Three. What are the three? Sahih, Hasan, and Da'if. What are the conditions for Sahih? You must have what? What are the 5 conditions? G. You're breaking up. I can't hear. Yeah, the entire chain must be muttasil. The entire chain, meaning every rawi must have heard from the person above him. There's no breakage in the chain, number 1. Number 2, each individual rawi must have what qualities? Dhabt and adala. It must be trustworthy and it must have the quality of a correct preservation. And there must be no shudud or no illa. Okay? And Hasan, what makes Hasan different to Sahih? The dhabt is khafif. The person narrating, his ability to preserve is khafif, lighter. Yes? And then da'if is where the dhabt is even lower than khafif, or any of the other things are a problem. The sanad is not muttasil, the rawi is not adil, the shuzuz or there is illa. According to man udhifa ilayh, according to who the hadith has been linked to. How many hadiths do we have? We have 3. What are the 3? It's going to be what? Marfu. What does marfu means? It's attributed to whom? The whom? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The second type is mawquf. Attributed to whom? A sahabi radiyallahu anhu. Then after that we have a maqtu'. And this is what? Something attributed to a tabi'i. Okay? And what is a musnad? What is a musnad? Yeah, if a hadith is marfu and muttasil, the word musnad, it encompasses it overlaps 2 categories. It has the highest category of man udhifa ilay and the highest category of ittisal is muttasil. So it's muttasil and musnad, muttasil and marfu, you call it a musnad. Okay? Now, according to this is the thing here. What's a musalsal? What's a musalsal hadith? A hadith in which the narrators try to narrate the hadith with the same quality, not the same words. That's on all hadith. But they try to have the same quality at the time of narration as the teacher had. Either reading the same surah, doing the same thing, giving the same thing, standing, sitting, yes, saying the same words. Okay? And according to the number of narrators, what do we have now? We have 3 categorizations here. What do we have here? We have gharib. What does gharib mean? There's only one narrator. After that we have Aziz. Aziz means the minimum number of narrators at each point is how many? 2. And Mashhur is what? Minimum at each point is 3. And then we have Mutawatir, which is not mentioned in the text, but it is used commonly. It's like there's so many more. Okay? Everyone understand? Yes? Any question regarding this? Okay. Subhanallah, bihamdi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.